What's up guys, Garrett here. Welcome back to another video. Apologies I didn't get this out in the morning like I'm kind of trying to do. I had to look up some more stuff to get this video ready, but nevertheless, in this video we're going to be going over the second way to utilize the new text value that the user types into a text form field. If you remember in last week's video, we looked at the first approach to doing that, which is the onChange callback method, which I said was the easier of the two ways, and that still stands true. It's definitely the easier of the two ways. Well, actually, maybe not easier. I would say the simpler of the two ways. Now, this way that we're going to go over today is not necessarily harder, especially not once you understand what's going on, but it's definitely more complex in that while, let's say, there's slightly more code that you have to write, what's really happening under the hood is significantly more. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to VS Code, open up your app, whatever you're kind of doing there. We're going to hop on into the preferences page on my app that I've been building, just like we've been doing in all these videos. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down inside of our state, and what we're going to do is create, actually first what we're going to do, sorry, before that, is we're going to create the actual widget so that we can kind of see something on the screen. So what we're going to do is we will have a text widget. We'll let that be blank right now, so data will equal nothing, or there won't be data rather. And then we will have a text, let's just do a text form field again because we did that and it worked out pretty well. And in here, we will have controller be this, is that how you spell controller? Yeah, controller, that doesn't exist yet, so why don't we go and create that right now. We'll have final underscore controller, and that will equal a text editing controller, like so. And then what we'll do is we will implement init state, and we need to do this because this is something that's going to need to exist from the get-go. It's not a value that we're going to be setting as time goes on, but rather something that needs to exist so that we can immediately start to listen to the user actually doing things, to when they start typing immediately right away from when this widget, or yeah, this widget tree is created. So to do that, we are going to call the init state method like so, and you can get rid of that comment to do. And then what we'll do is we will actually start, well, actually let's come back up here real quick and let's create a string, or a text value variable of type string, I should say, like so. Let's copy this and paste it down here, right? Because our text is going to be the value of this. You can do this two different ways. I'm going to do the string interpolation right there. Now let's go back to our init state thing here. And what we'll do is we will get that controller that we just created, and we'll add a listener. So let me just finish writing this out, and then I'll explain what this does. Yeah, so that's basically it right there. Really simple. It's essentially what's happening here is that our controller, as we have it right here, is nothing more than a class. We're instantiating a new class right here. And this is partly why this becomes more complex, because it's not just a callback method inside of a class that previously existed, our text form field here, which is what we did last week in that video. We're actually creating something totally different, totally separate from this, and then kind of assigning it to be a part of it. But without that assigning right here, it's not. It's its complete own thing. And this is why, partly at least, why it's so much more complex. While we're not necessarily writing all of the code for this here, we are creating a totally separate entity to exist and interact with our widget, with our UI, right? And that's why it gets more complex. And there's more responsibility on our part, the developer, right, to be able to utilize this. So what we'll do is, because this, now this text editing controller, I recommend going to the documentation and reading up on this if you want to. But this has a lot of information on it. It has a few properties on it, and now that it's connected here, it basically gets those, its properties are basically kind of populated with the data that come from this. And if we save this, by the way, we should get right here, we should now get our text field and null, because this doesn't equal anything. We'll get null right there, but it won't be null for long. Okay, so it has all these properties, right? One of those properties is the text property. So what we've done is we've added a listener, which is basically saying, hey, listen to everything this does, right? Listen to all the changes it does, all that stuff. And inside of that listener, we're taking in this callback method that is basically this callback function that's basically saying every time something new happens, do something, or at least allow us to do something. Whether or not we want to do something is up to us, right? So in here, just to show what's going on and how this actually is working, let's say text. I'm going to make this a capital, or all caps, text. And then we'll say, in curly braces, we'll say, controller.text. And text right here is simply a property of this text editing controller, one of the ones I was talking about, that we can now kind of see what's going on. So let's go and do that. We'll exit that out. And if I start typing in here, actually just by clicking in there, you can see that something happened, and that's because it changed. It's listening for every single change, and even clicking in there is technically a change. So we can see that when we type, right, it gives us that value. So if I type my name here, we now have that value. This is pretty awesome, because this means that obviously we get the value, the new value of whatever it equals, but we can do whatever we want with that value. One of those things that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set state, right? I'm going to set this text value to equal whatever this equals. So we'll do set state, and we'll say text value is going to equal controller.text. Okay? Doesn't work. Let's go onto another page. We'll come back. Now, something different there. Something different happened. Let's see. What was that? Let's watch that again. We'll go back here. We'll go to preferences. This is null. Why is that null? Because it's not set to anything right now. Obviously, it's null, right? But when I click in there, it technically is set to something. It's set to an empty string, right? And now, if I type, maybe if I spell my name correctly, though, we can see that I typed in Garrett, my name, and this too is now equal to Garrett. So this is amazing, because this means that you can now use the controller to basically handle everything. You can take that text and pass it along wherever you want. This right here is what we used in our onChange callback method in the last video, right? It's that simple. The same code inside of this callback method, basically the same thing, right? Okay, so let's now take this a little bit further, because yes, this is working here, sure, but we can add something else actually to make it, I guess, more correct, if you will. So let's type in controller again, and we'll use another property. It's the value property. This is actually almost like text. It's kind of similar, except that I think text is more so the initial value, and this is the current value, I think, of whatever it is. Side note, as I'm editing this, I realized I made an error here in what I said. The text property is actually the current string that the user is editing, not the initial value of the text or the controller. And then the value property is the current value stored in this particular notifier. And so if we set this to be controller value copy with, now copy with is a Dart thing, I believe, that essentially will take whatever the new value of something that you call, whatever it is that you call it on, and it'll basically just kind of return it with that new value, I think is how it sounded. So we'll have text here, and then let's basically just have this. We'll have text value right there. Perfect. Now, nothing's going to change. I just think that this is the correct way of doing it. And the documentation actually does this too. So I'm assuming that means it's correct versus simply having this set state thing. Okay, so that's pretty much it, believe it or not. It was pretty simple. We really didn't do anything different from, in terms of code-wise, like, our reactive code. We didn't actually do anything too different from what we did with the onChange method. The only real difference, I guess, is that we're using a more complex thing because this is instantiating a new class. And then the other thing is that we're adding a listener inside of init state. Now, one thing that's kind of annoying about this is that you would have to actually have a listener added. You would have to add a listener for every single field that you have. That's definitely kind of annoying, I guess, if you have a lot of fields there that you'd have to have one of these for everything, I think. But it definitely gives you a lot more power. And with more power comes more responsibility. And speaking of that responsibility, one of the things we have to do is remember that the instantiation of this here is taking up resources, system resources. This isn't something like just a function that we're kind of calling and, we can kind of call it a day. This is a real thing that has to be added, right? The computer or our phones or whatever, well, they're all computers. They have to kind of add it and keep track of it and whatnot. And that means that they also have to be removed. So the last thing that we have to do here is we have to call Dispose. So the widget, stateless widgets rather, have this dispose method that we can override basically to clean up after ourselves when this widget is removed from the screen. We also want to remove and free up any of the system resources that it was using. And so what we'll do is we'll simply call controller and dispose, which is a method on the controller. We'll go back into preferences. So if I were to, I'm typing whatever, I have some stuff in there. And if I were to go away to a new page, let's go back here, that means that that controller is now, it doesn't exist anymore. So if I were to now go back to here, it's just created a new controller. Whereas if I didn't do this, it would not delete that controller, so it would still exist. And if I went back to it, it would also create a new controller, and that would basically cause bad performance eventually if you had enough of them that were built up, and also something of a memory leak as well, which is also not exactly what you want. So guys, thanks so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all, put them down in the comments below. If you have any suggestions, put them down in the comments below. If you have any critiques, also put them down in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up, please. It really does help the channel. I'm trying to come out with a lot more videos like this, and I really do enjoy making them. It's pretty fun. And also, subscribe if you want to see more. I make cool videos. Next week's video will probably, hopefully, be on stateful widgets, like in depth. So it'll probably be a little bit longer, a lot more in detail. I was going to actually do it for this week's video, but I didn't really feel that it was good enough, that I really understood it well enough to teach it or explain it even. So that's why it's not today's video. But hopefully next week we'll get there. So again, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Peace.